So welcome everybody to the first Future Social Care Coalition Social Care Lobby Day. It's time for action on social care. The Future Social Care Coalition was formed largely because there is a crisis in social care. There was a crisis before the pandemic, and the crisis is getting deeper and wider every day. What we're here to do today is to bring that, to really shout out for everyone who works in social care, but also those people who support social care, and also those people who draw on social care. One of the big points when you talk about policy or governments who have failed probably social care from many decades is that often the argument rests very much on the older person. Whilst that's well and good, social care will impact on everyone at some point in their lives, and the people who work in social care deserve to be respected, regarded, and have parity with those in the NHS. So let's get social care done. That's the message today. Shout out for all those in the social care workforce. We want to hear stories. We're collecting stories on the website, true stories of what it's like on the front line, true stories about the people who receive social care and support, and true stories from families and people who are really suffering or living day in, day out with the need and support of the social care workforce. Crucially, there's a lack of capacity in the system. We know that. Even before the pandemic and the cost of living crisis hit, there was we estimated 110,000 vacancies in social care. The gap is even deeper. There are now upwards of 150,000 vacancies. So today is about calling for urgent action, immediate action, and the government acknowledging that they need to do something to give social care workforce a fair deal. It's time for a fair deal. It's time for action. The three things that we want you to do today is sign the pledge, sign the letter to the Prime Minister, give us your story, and also give us your support. Put your I care for care workers on our website. So we want parity of esteem. We want a social care workforce strategy. We want an immediate funding boost and solution. Our pledges around the real living wage. We want to be paid for all the hours that are worked, and parity of pay and conditions with the NHS. We need government to address the recruitment and retention crisis. And more than that, we need a fully funded long-term solution. Now, that is certainly enough for me. I'm just going to MC the day, keep it running. We've got an absolutely stellar lineup of people who are going to rally and show their support, but also shout out for those wonderful and brilliant social care workers who work so hard on our behalf. There's nobody I'd rather pass on the introduction to this lobby day other than Christina McAnea, who's the General Secretary of UNISON and also the co-chair of the FSCC. Christina, you're a champion for social care workers. I know it's an issue that's so close to your heart, but I'd like you to kick off the day, if that's okay. Christina.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I know it's probably not the way we wanted it to be, but also probably not very comfortable if you're sitting in an office or a room somewhere, unless you happen to be somewhere that's air conditioned. But welcome everyone, as Jill has said, really important that we're here today to talk about social care and that we keep up the pressure and keep up the noise. And it is still really important and really timely that we're still discussing this. And it's another chance to show the breadth and depth and strength of our coalition that we've pulled together, and to reassert the importance of demanding that the government pay fair for care. It's quite simple. And with everything going on in politics at the moment, there is a real danger that the important issues, such as the one we're raising today, don't get the airtime that they need. Social care has barely featured at all in the Conservative leadership contest, and when it has done, it's been largely in relation to taxation and the national insurance rise. When actually what we need is a much more fundamental debate about the importance of social care, about the way it's structured, the way it's funded, the needs of the people who use social care, and of course the workforce who deliver social care. And the ongoing inability of successive governments to fund it properly is a major concern. And I do mean successive governments, not just the current one, but ones before it as well. Because no matter what the previous, well, I think he is still the Prime Minister at this point in time, Boris Johnson said, social care has certainly not been fixed. It's not done, as Jill said, we need to get it done. And this is immediately obvious to anyone who is involved in the sector or to anyone from outside just looking at the sector. Low pay remains endemic. Vacancy rates are still incredibly high and getting higher. A third of staff leave their care jobs every single year. I mean, that's an unhealthy turnover of staff. And decades of underfunding have created a race to the bottom and also put responsible providers in a situation where they're almost being left with no option but to either cross-subsidise if they're in the position to be able to do that, or where they're having to trying to compete with, if you like, the ones that aren't as ethical as them in ways that they don't particularly want to compete, which is they're having to offer lower salaries and can't give people the kind of rises that they think are necessary. And the government response so far has gone nowhere near enough. The white paper did finally arrive at the end of last year, but it offered far too little, virtually no mention of pay, and certainly nothing to match the scale of the crisis we're facing. And all of us in the sector recognise the need for vastly improved funding. We all recognise the need to raise the standing of the sector, and there are different views on how this should be done. Of course there are, but there's also a lot of consensus on what actually needs to be done to boost spending, boost the status of the sector, including areas such as a comprehensive workforce strategy. Everyone that I've spoken to, everyone that we've had involved in the coalition, employers, providers, commissioners, trade unions, are all saying the same thing when it comes to calling for a comprehensive workforce strategy. And we've pointed to that in the Future Social Care Coalition's framework for a social care people plan. It's not rocket science, it's entirely doable. All it needs is a bit of a kickstart from government and a commitment from government to make this happen. And improving the funding and status of social care is something that's worth doing, not just because it's the right thing to do, not just because there's so much untapped potential in the sector, but because too often spending on social care is seen as a burden in society and not as an investment. And we have to change that narrative. Social care is as important to the infrastructure of our society as roads and railways and hospitals and anything else that you can think of. It's just as important to enable all of these things to happen. And it could be playing a much more important role in economic regrowth, rebuilding communities. And what better way to level up than by targeting investment in social care, a predominantly female workforce and with a high proportion of Black workers and predominantly low paid workers. How better to level up than target funding at groups like that? Because people who work in social care usually live in the local area, will spend their money in the local area. And so social care should be a key part of a modern industrial and political strategy, creating local jobs, green jobs, helping people back into work, supporting people who want to keep working but need that bit of extra care, or supporting people who want to work but have to look after relatives who rely on them. And it's an integral part of our wider public services. It's vital to the work we know of the NHS, of housing services, because as we know, if social care isn't working, it has a huge impact on them. It needs proper investment and a real focus from those in power, and it needs fundamental reform to stop the kind of very poor practices we see with organisations like private equity and hedge funds basically siphoning off money from the sector money that could be spent improving care and paying staff a decent wage. Social care needs to have the same status as the NHS, with recognition for the different skills needed to deal with the range of complex needs for those who rely on the service. Finally, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who are social care staff for continuing to do such a difficult job. So for the workers, for the people who receive social care and support, and for their families, it's up to all of us to keep up the volume, to keep demanding reform, to insist that social care is given the prominence it deserves. There's much to be done, and I really hope, Jill, and everyone on this call, that from today we actually continue to keep the pressure on to achieve real change in a sector that needs it and deserves it. Thank you.
Fantastic, Christina. That's absolutely right and well said. We will keep the pressure on. This is about sustaining momentum. We're not going anywhere. We're going to keep going on and on and on until it's done. So it's time for action, but we're going to keep it up there. Now I'm going to call in again very briefly. We've got Ben Powick from the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. Again, just really quick message of support from you, Ben. That'd be great.
Yeah, of course. I've noted down sort of 4 key things here: pay, conditions, recruitment, and retention. I think those are 4 key themes that will cut across allied health professions, occupational therapists, physiotherapists, and all of our sort of colleagues in the health and care workforce. I think it's very clear there's a recruitment and retention crisis in care. We did a recent survey of nearly 600 of our members, and nearly half of all of our members, 48%, said that they are dealing with long-standing issues with recruitment and retention, which just gives a real terrifying snapshot about the crisis that is currently developing there and has been there before COVID, has been exposed by COVID, and really shows the need for investment in the long term and into the future. Add to that the legacy of COVID, it's impacting the workforce. We know that half of our members are supporting people living with long COVID at the moment, therefore creating extra pressures. And I think one of the key things that will add to this sort of the debate and the discussion today is the need to address the lack of career progression for those in social care settings. You know, we talk about recruitment, and retention is very much the other key pillar there. We know that, for example, in terms of occupational therapists, quite often when you get to a certain level, for example, a band 6, you'll then look to the NHS or to a private setting because there isn't a clear career structure there. There isn't opportunities to develop and to grow within social care that there are in the NHS. So the government needs to properly address the crisis by providing funding for allied health professionals, for nurses, for doctors in the care settings, so that there is parity of esteem with our NHS colleagues, also so that we retain our workers for the long term. And they can do this by introducing a proper people plan that's going to really look at the long-term need and meet the demands of the future.
Fantastic, thanks Ben, indeed. I'm going to switch now to Nadra Ahmed from the NCA, just again, different perspective, but putting it in context and a message of support, Nadra, and then we're going to have one quick message from Mark Adams from Community Integrated Care, and then we're going to go to Wes Streeting, so who's I've seen is there. Hi Wes, okay. Nadra. Oh, you're on mute.
There had to be one, and it had to be me, didn't it? Thank you very much, Jill. Thank you for the opportunity to leave us some support here, which is a no-brainer. Working in social care, representing small to medium-sized providers, we know the key to the success of social care. There are 2 elements. One of them is the funding of social care, but the more important one is our workforce. And on both scores, we are in an extremely challenging position. And the terminology that's been bandied about that social care is being fixed, it is absolutely not true. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here to represent those providers and those people who work in our services, who are there today on this extremely hot day. It's our workforce that is going out into people's homes to try and support them for the hours that that they've been commissioned to do, or the workforce that are in the care homes who are actually delivering that service, so that many of us can continue to do our day-to-day jobs and look after ourselves. and they are worth a lot more than we can actually imagine. Actually, they're priceless. And I'm also fighting today for those that have got unmet needs today. I want us to think about those people who don't get social care because there are some challenges around funding. So the call out today, the most important message is, let's get it fixed. We've been let down by successive governments over the years, and it's interesting how people always have the solution when they're no longer in power. So when you have the time and you have that remit, make sure you make it happen, whether it's in a small way or in a big way. Social care deserves a lot more, and we have to think about what not fixing it means. And that is for our colleagues in the NHS and how they are struggling, and all that we hear about the NHS and the funding of the NHS. Let's just think if a portion of that money could be allocated towards our teams, what a difference it would make. We also need to think about that progression agenda. How do we entice people into work in our field? Let's look at the image of social care. Let's talk about it in a more positive way than you might be used to hearing. So please join us. Please talk about social care and just sign the pledges. Thank you.
Okay, we'll quickly go to Mark Adams on the video. Jade, if you're there, we can just quickly play a message from one of our other supporters, and then we'll go to Wes. Ta-da! Going very well.
Community integrated care is proud to be supporting the Future Social Care Coalition's Social Care Lobby Day to really recognise the wonderful 1.6 million social care workers that we have in this country. Only last year, Community Integrated Care commissioned the Unfair to Care report, which clearly demonstrated that there was a gap of up to 39% between what our wonderful social care workers are paid and what equivalent colleagues are earning in the NHS or other publicly funded services. It's about time that we got this fixed, and we are calling out, together with the whole of our industry, please government, sort this out once and for all. Thank you.
And so I think that's a very good intro there to, and a call really to Wes Streeting, who's the Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care, and has been very vocal on this really important issue over even before he was in this position, and will appreciate. So Wes, really very grateful that you're here, and I think you've had your first session with Steve Barclay today, but you can perhaps comment on that as well. But over to you, looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Jill, and it's good to join you all. I think first and last session with Steve Barclay today, because he's very unlikely to be the Health Secretary by the time we have the next round of health questions. Although given what NHS leaders said about him in the recent Health Service Journal, I'm not sure how disappointed people will be by that news. I'm spending less time thinking about what this government is doing and more time thinking about what the next Labour government will do, because I think after 12 years in power, the Conservatives have run out of time and run out of excuses for failing to fix the crisis in social care, but also the state of the NHS. I mean, it's just worth reflecting that 12 years ago, when they took office, they inherited some of the shortest waiting times in history, waiting times brought down from an average of 18 months to 18 weeks, and the highest patient satisfaction in the history of the NHS. And they've squandered all of that. And of course, COVID is having an impact on the health service. Of course, the hot weather is having an impact. And by winter, no doubt that we're blaming the cold weather too. But we can't blame the state of the NHS on the weather or even the pandemic, because we went into the pandemic with the NHS already a record 4.5 million on the waiting list, 100,000 staff vacancies in the NHS, and 112,000 vacancies in social care, which really brings me on to the focus of our meeting today, because quite rightly and understandably, the news is dominated by the pressures on ambulance services. But in order to understand the delays through the front door of the hospital, whether it's ambulance waits or the accident emergency department, you need to look at the exit door and the fact that there are around 400,000 delayed discharges each month, primarily because the support just isn't there in social care. And so in terms of the immediate challenge, I think a test for these new integrated care boards and the integrated care system, a test for me about whether they're working is, are they taking money now and investing it into social care to deal with those delayed discharges, or are acutes just going to hoover up all the money? Because when you look at the funding of health and social care overall, and you compare it to other leading OECD economies, funding in acutes actually runs pretty hot. And I've sort of come to the conclusion that whilst, you know, I'm not in the Sajid Javid school pretending that money isn't an issue in the NHS, quite the opposite, but I have come to the conclusion that if we're serious about reducing those NHS waiting lists, we're serious about improving the flow of patients through hospitals, we've got to fix the exit door to the hospital, which is about social care and those delayed discharges. And we've also got to deal with the breakdown of the front door to the NHS in primary care. And if we do those two things, we'll reduce a lot of pressure on acutes. That means we can deal with the backlog quicker. And it means that some of the really worrying outcomes we're seeing in things like cancer diagnostic and treatment, we can get those things speeded up. But look, social care isn't just there to make the life of the NHS easier. It is there because whether we're talking about working age disabled people who need support, or whether we're talking about people living longer into retirement who need a bit of extra support or care, or perhaps even more than a bit, perhaps quite a lot of care. We want everyone, whatever their age, to be able to enjoy a good quality of life, dignity of a good quality of life, and the sorts of security and opportunities that means that whether people are working age disabled people who want to play a full and active part of family life, social life, working life, they've got support to do it, or whether we're talking about retirement, we want people not, you know, we don't want people looking forward to retirement just to look back on a life well lived. We want people in retirement living life to the full until the very end, and social care is a really important way of doing that. And we know it's in crisis, and we know that despite the claims of ministers to fix social care, they just haven't done anything like it. So where's the Labour Party on this, and what are we likely to say at the next election? Well, without giving our whole manifesto away at this point, as we saw with the windfall tax, there's nothing to stop this lot coming in like magpies and nicking it. Just as the Labour Party created the NHS to meet the challenges of the 20th century, we want to build a national care service to meet the challenges of the 21st century. So there's one thing that the Beveridge report didn't anticipate and didn't foresee when they created the foundations of the welfare state. It was the importance of care, whether we're talking about childcare or social care. We've got a big care-shaped hole in the system, and got to be honest about the fact that delivering a national care service isn't something we can deliver overnight. Perhaps not even something we can deliver entirely in a single parliament, but it's something we need to start work on straight away. And so what would my priorities would be? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that people who receive care have the same access to good quality care wherever they live in the country. So national standards is going to be really important. And secondly, you meet those standards by recognising that social care is and will always be fundamentally about people, the people who receive it and whose needs need to be met, but crucially the people who work in it. And if there's one thing the public understand about social care, which can often sound very complicated and a bit alien, especially if you haven't encountered it, and perhaps even more alien if you have encountered the system and the various loopholes you have to jump through to try and get the support you need or family members need, there's one thing the public understand is that you don't get good quality care without people who are paid well, well trained, well supported. And I think it is a damning indictment on where this government finds itself on social care, that there are people leaving social care to go and work for the likes of Amazon, because even a company like Amazon, which, let's be honest, is not famous for its good pay terms and conditions, even a company like Amazon is paying better and treating people better than social care, which is a crucial public service. So a big priority, an urgent priority for the next Labour government will be sorting out the pay, terms and conditions and career progression for people who work in the system. That means that we do, I think, three things. One, provide better quality care. Two, reduce the pressure on the NHS by dealing with those delayed discharges. And three, I don't know if the Conservative Party will still be committed to levelling up come the autumn. I'm not entirely convinced they're committed to it now. But if they are in the market for a good levelling up policy, a policy that puts more money into the pockets of a workforce who are disproportionately working class women right across the country, that is real levelling up. Not a few hanging baskets or planters on the high street, lovely though they are, and I like them on my local high street. A real levelling up policy is one that puts more money into the pockets of working people so that they can provide the security and opportunity for their families that any of us would want for our own. So that will be our starting point. I'm really excited that the Fabian Society is doing a thorough piece of work for us on how we build towards the National Care Service over time. And I'm delighted that UNISON's supporting that work. And I'm really glad to see my General Secretary, I'm a UNISON member, Christina, and lots of other UNISON colleagues on this call today. So I think we've got a really exciting vision for where we want to be on social care. Of course, we need to win a general election to do that. I'm very grateful to the efforts that Boris Johnson and the Conservative leadership candidates are putting into securing that Labour government for us. But we know we can't just rely on the Tories failing at the next election. We've got to provide hope in a Labour government and also a belief that we can deliver what we say we will. And I think national standards, better pay terms and conditions and career progressions for staff who work in social care will be the solid foundations that we need to build towards that vision of a national care service. Nye Bevan called the NHS the most civilised thing in the world. Our challenge now is to rebuild the NHS for the 21st century, but we won't succeed in building a society that provides good health, positive health, well-being, and good care throughout our lives unless we have a national care service alongside it. That's Labour's ambition, and that's what the next Labour government will start to build.
Thank you very much, Wes. That's great to hear. And also, I think the main point for today is that, we need fair pay. It's a very simple, and it makes sense to, particularly when you've got a cost of living crisis and people are, whether it's Amazon, not to name Amazon in particular, there are others, but we will hear today, and the stories from our lobby, demonstrate that people are really struggling to survive, and they are leaving. They can't retain. It's a real big problem whether you provide care or you receive care. And I think that commitment to sort of say it makes economic sense because it goes back into the economy. It's not going anywhere else, and it also makes lives easier. So that immediate funding boost that we're calling for, it just makes economic and moral sense. It's just, and we do want that parity. So thank you ever so much for sparing that time today, and look forward to working with you as we go forward. Please sign our pledges, write to whoever the Secretary of State for Health might be, join our letter, and keep giving him or her hell. We want to get social care done, and it's good to have your support. Okay, that's enough from Wes. Now we should have, next up should be Andy Burnham, but I'm not sure if I've got him on the call. So what we're going to do is I'm going to play a quick ad break so you can get active in this lobby and start doing things. You can pledge your support, sign up to the pledges. It's all in the chat. We'd like you to, if you haven't already done so, write to your MP and say, I'd like to come and talk to you about our story. We weren't able to do it today physically, but you can go and talk to them in their advice surgery, ask them to come and see what your workplace is like. That's a really, fundamental right. We've asked for you to tell us your stories. real frontline stories. You may have seen some of them in the Mirror, and you know, that's really around getting public acknowledgement that, you know, things need to be done, and that there is a real emergency in terms of retaining and keeping and recruiting staff in social care. So we've also got the letter. So we've got sign up the letter. Please be tweeting away about what this wonderful lobby day. Tell people that you're here. I've seen Andy here, so I can relax. And we'll just do a quick ad break, just to refresh your memory, and we'll go straight into Andy, and then all the parliamentary supporters as well. Okay, ad break. Okay, so please do use those hashtags, time for action, get social care done, time to fix social care. They're all really big messages. So without further ado, I would like to introduce another member of the Future Social Care Coalition, an advisory on our advisory board, and a big champion of social care for many, many moons, including when he was in charge. But I know this again is a real issue close to your heart, Andy, and we just really like to hear your words of wisdom and support for what we're trying to achieve. Andy.
Well, thanks, Jill. Afternoon, everybody. I'm very much a proud member of this commission, and I think it is crucial. It has a crucial role to play, given where we are in the social care debate. I've not seen social care mentioned much, if at all, in the current leadership debate, and to the extent that it is affected, it looks like it may go backwards, with people talking about removing some of the tax measures to pay for better social care. So we're not in a good place at this moment in time. And it's actually why it's so important that we're gathered here this afternoon. And Jill, thank you to you and everybody supporting you who's made today happen. You know, I've attended many events of this kind in the past, and we'll make the rallying call, and I will make those rallying calls for sure before I finish speaking. But I'm wondering now whether we just need to take things more into our own hands, Jill, and make change happen from the bottom up. Because 2 weeks ago, across England, integrated care systems came into being. I want to find partners across the country who are now ready to build an integrated workforce to support an integrated care system, because that's what follows, isn't it? A workforce where there are comparable terms and conditions, comparable access to training, professional development standards, equipment, obviously. That's what we should be doing from here. And I think that's where this goes in terms of practical action. We build that integrated care workforce from the bottom up. We are making some progress in Greater Manchester. All 10 of our councils have now committed to paying the real living wage for commissioned social care staff by the middle of next year. So that is a major step forward, and I'd like to thank them for backing us. And they, you know, the 8 Labour councils, but a Lib Dem led council and a Tory council as well. It's a cross-party move. And I think we need to use that as a foundation, Jill, to go even further. You know, we are, if you like, moving now towards an era of truly integrated commissioning, where councils and the health service come together. And I think we need to send out a clear message today that we want to see that commissioning be commissioning for quality when it comes to social care, commissioning from organisations, from providers who are not just prepared to give people a real living wage, but to give people who provide care for a living hours, because that's the next issue, isn't it, that comes straight out of that, but also secure contracts, and as I said, support with training and professional development. And it's time to be bold. If some of those providers say they won't do that, particularly the for-profit providers, well, I think the commissioning should just then bare its teeth and should say, right, we move those contracts to not-for-profit providers, community and voluntary providers who are prepared to pay a living wage, who are prepared to give people living hours, give people the security that they will need as individuals in their lives if they are to pass on a sense of security and well-being for those that they care for. Because it is that simple, isn't it? You can't, as a professional carer, do what you want to do and what is your calling to do without having that basic security in your own life. And this is about the quality of what's provided for those, obviously, who receive social care as well as looking after people who provide it fairly and properly. And Jill, I would like to see whether you, through this commission, could partner integrated care systems that are prepared to go on this journey of driving change from the bottom up, building an integrated care and health and care workforce across both, and starting to think differently about social care. If we get the quality into care in the home, that is one of the best ways of taking pressure off the acute system. And it's often the lack of care of commissioning for quality in domiciliary care that means, you know, we end up with people in hospital when that needn't have been the case. No reflection on those providing the care, but a damning indictment of those organisations that often do not support their own workers, actually do not pay them for all the hours worked, as we know, often not paying for travel time. I just think the time has come to call time on all of those practices and start to commission differently for a better care system. And I think in the end, if we can integrate the workforce, if we can bring comparable standards to social care with regard to not just pay, terms and conditions, but training as well, if we can create pathways for social care staff or care assistants perhaps to progress into roles within the NHS, then I think we will create a much more rewarding environment for young people who want to go into social care to go into, with prospects for progression, which aren't currently there at the moment. And in the end, for me, if we move in that direction towards an integrated workforce, supporting an integrated care system, I think that is the foundation for a government that is minded to do so, to then put in the funds necessary to make this a national health and care service in time, where across the board we have a system that is funded by taxation. In my view, it's still got to be a mix of taxes on wealth and assets alongside general taxation, but that is the way that we should be going, in my view. But we've waited long enough, I'm afraid, for the action to come top down, and you know that I'm afraid is true of all governments. The time has come to drive change from the bottom up. It is absolutely right, the call of this lobby today: pay fair for care. How many times do we have to say it? You know, how can we live through what we've lived through with the pandemic, when we saw the parlous state of social care, and not take action to do something now? It would be immoral not to act. We cannot possibly countenance the situation where social care may be as exposed again in a pandemic situation as it was just a couple of years ago. So unfair, not just to the staff, but of course to the people receiving care. This has got to be a watershed moment in this country. We can't keep having rallies saying we want change and nothing happens. It is time, Jill, I think, to take control of this situation ourselves. And I want to hear from partners around the country who are prepared to now drive an integrated workforce through integrated commissioning at the ICS level. So it's in our hands, and the experience from Greater Manchester is we can do it. You know, the councils have taken a risk, but they are doing it. And if the NHS gets on board as well and helps councils commission for quality in social care, which in the end will help the NHS as well, as I say, with regard to reducing unnecessary hospitalisation, that is the way we drive change. And in the end, we force people to act. So that's where my thinking is at the moment, Jill. That's why I strongly support this lobby day today. We've waited long enough. Now is the time to act and to make change real for people who are out there today, caring in care homes, caring in people's homes in this weather, doing it for pay that is just simply not in any way a reflection of who they are or what they do. Looking after for other people's parents or other people's relatives should be the highest calling that you can answer in life. It should be rewarded as such. And yet we have the opposite. Well, I'm ashamed of the situation that we're in. Social care is in crisis. While I appreciate the commitment made recently from my own party to a national care service, I would also say, though, there is urgency about this. Building it over successive parliaments may not be quick enough. In fact, I don't feel it will be quick enough. We need to see decisive action to lift social care up from its currently powerless position. So, Jill, I'm here in full support of everything that people are saying today. I think it's wonderful, actually, that this Future Social Care Coalition has started to capture the stories of people working in social care, voices for far too long forgotten. And actually giving a profile to them and what they've got to say is so important to drive the change that we need. I'll leave it there. It's just brilliant to be with you all. And back to you, Jill.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, Andy, as always. Really good. And I think, you know, let's keep that thought around how we can be bolder, how we can think around the opportunity around integrated care, but also, you know, there is this whole thing about sort of you know, it all being so centralized that we do need to really think around the issues around the geography, because it's very different whether you're in a city or in a rural area or whatever areas. They're all different in terms of the needs. And I think we need to really think a little bit more around how we can get underneath that. But the fundamental thing, which I think is coming out again and again, is that it makes sense to pay fair for care. And I think we can get support from that. Now, let's quickly now go to a series of supporters. I'm going to come to the parliamentarians who are here also to shout out for social care. But we have messages from Ed Davey, Steve Rotherham, the Mayor for Liverpool City Region, Angela Rayner, Seema Malhotra, and finally, surprise, surprise, Joe Brand. So a quick little film for you to feel warm and cozy that people are supporting us.
We simply don't pay social care workers enough for the difficult and important work they do. We have to start valuing carers properly. As COVID has shown, caring for people's health doesn't stop at the hospital exit or the GP surgery door. We can only truly protect the NHS if we stand up for carers too. So it's time for a fair deal for social care, with immediate emergency funding and a cross-party agreement for its long-term sustainable future. I and all Liberal Democrats will stand up for carers and lead the way to a more caring society.
My name's Steve Rotherham. I'm the Mayor of the Liverpool City Region, and I'm a long-term campaigner in support of proper recognition for our social care workers. It's a long-term injustice, but the events of the coronavirus pandemic threw things into even sharper focus. These are the very key workers who we all stood and clapped for, who keep our loved ones safe day in, day out. They deserve far, far more than the round of applause that they were given. For too long, social care has been underfunded while its staff have been undervalued. As the cost of living crisis bites, it's time for that to change. So I'm calling for a fair deal for social care, proper pay for staff, and a sustainable long-term funding settlement to allow those heroes to keep up their incredible work.
Social care workers looked after us through the pandemic, looked after our loved ones and shown their true value to all of us. And I want to say a huge thank you to all of those that worked and continue to work in social care. You deserve far better pay and better terms and conditions. And I know the Social Care Coalition as well as UNISON have been pushing hard on these issues, and hopefully you'll get that recognition that you deserve. So thank you to everything that you do for us on a daily basis. As a former care worker myself, I know how difficult it can be when you're not given the time you need or the pay and the resources. We'll fight for you and continue to fight for you to get the recognition that you truly deserve.
I'm Seema Malhotra, Member of Parliament for Feltham and Heston. Social care workers are the backbone of our communities. I've seen firsthand how care workers work tirelessly to support and care for the most vulnerable in our community. It is truly humbling. When my mum had a stroke a few years ago, her care workers were her lifeline. And I've heard so many amazing stories from constituents about care workers who have gone above and beyond. But better change must mean fundamental change. A change that sees social care workers valued as highly as NHS workers and paid at least the real living wage. The government needs to stop turning its back on social care. It's time for a fair deal for social care. Pay fair for care.
In a parallel universe, dedication and hard work would be rewarded with decent pay. Unfortunately, we don't live in a parallel universe. We're in this one, and care workers simply are not rewarded for the very, very hard work that they do, especially in these really, really difficult times. So all I'm here to say is pay care workers a living wage. Simple, it's not difficult. Ta-da.
Well, she sums it up very nicely there, doesn't she, Jo, and everybody. So we're here really to get parliamentary supporters, hear from them. We would be lobbying you live and in action if we were, but I'm pleased that we've got many parliamentarians who've managed to bear with us and stay in with the technology. And we've got, leading off really from the Liverpool City region again, is Alison McGovern. So really pleased, lovely to see you, and hope you're not too hot in Parliament today. Okay, Alison, over to you.
Thanks, Jill. And it is quite warm, but I'm sat next to a fan. So yes, there's masses of support for this campaign in the northwest of England, but I think we've heard from others like Seema from London and other parts of the country. I think there's support for this everywhere. I would just say care workers, people who run care companies, the council, councillors, UNISON, GMB, other civil society organisations, faith groups and others often talk to me about this issue, and they all believe that it's very, very important and doesn't get the hearing that it deserves in politics. So I would just congratulate everybody who's a part of the coalition, and definitely the view from my constituency is it's important that we keep going with this. So thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with what my colleagues have already said about fairness. I just want to say a little bit about what the practicality of this is, because at the moment, I don't believe that people who need care and support or people who work in care have the dignified existence that they deserve. They don't have the dignity at work or the dignity of treatment that they deserve. We see that whether it's the ambulance crisis at the moment, where we're seeing these major challenges for the NHS. We see what's happening at the front door with ambulances, but people look away when we talk about the real problem, which is that actually too many people are staying in hospital too long because of a failure in social care. And we're not giving this issue the importance that it deserves, I believe. But if you look at it, having better social care will help the NHS so much. As Andy said, we need to bring together that integration properly. I think from a practical point of view, we've got the Ethical Care Charter, which a number of councils have signed up to. So I think we can start this journey from the grassroots. I agree with Andy on that, and I think that we'll find a lot of partners who want to work together to have decent standards of work and decent standards of care. We know that that means better pay. I think that there's really big, challenging reasons why a role that is largely performed by women in the main is treated as if it's low skilled and therefore low paid, when it in fact is very highly skilled and should be much better paid. Also, terms and conditions really matter. And there's people on this call who know much better than me how horrendous it has been making sure that care staff are not on 0 hours contracts, that they've got timetables that are actually doable. I've had constituents come to my surgery and show me their timetable of the care that they're supposed to deliver and the journeys that they need to make. And it's literally as if the clock does not exist. It's like a fantasy world. So you can't expect people to do that job where the expectations placed upon them are a mirage. They'll never achieve it. So we've got to have a job that that people are capable of doing and where they feel supported. The best way to get good care to people who are important to us all, who need that support, is to care and support for the people doing the work. And that brings me to my final point, Jill, and I'll shut up. My final practical point about how we translate our anger and our ambition for care into a reality of something better in the United Kingdom is what I think is at the heart of dignity and respect for care workers. And that is their right to a good career and to have autonomy in their work. We know that too many care workers come into the job, they get paid a certain amount, they like it, they stay, they're good at it, they become really expert, and their pay stays the same. And that is not a good way to respect people and to encourage them to move up through the profession. I also have seen with my own eyes, when I've done days at work in care homes, I have seen with my own eyes how challenging it is to look after people who are frail. I remember being given a cup of hot tea by a member of care staff and told, oh, could you just help this lady here have that tea? And I got down on my knees and I held the hot tea, and I realized I had absolutely no idea what to do. And that member of care staff had such experience, such knowledge built up over years. And she was also trying to help me to learn. And where care staff have the autonomy to use their instincts and their knowledge, you get such a much better quality of that care. So it's not just that we need people to have a career progression and to be able to move on and move up in their work in care, but we also need to respect their knowledge and their autonomy. And I think if we had a vision for a country where people receiving care had the right to dignity and respect, and so did the people who were working in care, I think we'd be a long way forward to the kind of country that we want to live in. So those are my practical steps along that path, and I really am enthusiastic about working with everybody to achieve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. That's great. Absolutely spot on. I'm going to go to Diana Warwick now, Baroness Warwick, who's there to join us. There's other MPs on the line. If I can ask you, because I'm very conscious of the time, I want you to show your support, but also, don't take too long. Okay.
Thanks very much indeed, Jill. I'm Diana Warwick. I'm a Labour peer, and I'm a member of the House of Lords Adult Social Care Select Committee. And I just wanted to say, first of all, that I strongly support this campaign. I think it's long overdue. There are so many people fighting this fight and so many hills, mountains to climb. But it was listening to the chair of the head of ADAS this morning talking about the pressures. I thought that was such a telling contribution about the way in which recruitment and retention in the care service is now at crisis point. But actually, this is nothing new. It's been going on even before the pandemic, and we've all known that, and the government just hasn't done anything about it. But I was really alarmed listening to the acrimonious debates between the candidates for the Conservative candidates in this unseemly scrambling that we're as to who's going to become the next Prime Minister. None of them has mentioned social care. And yet, in fact, they've all threatened tax changes, and particularly the national insurance increase, which was agreed by Parliament and which was intended very specifically to get social care done. And they haven't even looked at the consequences of what they've been saying. But I just wanted to say, because I'm a member of the Adult Social Care Committee, I just wanted to say something about the issue of the most, whether you can be most invisible or not, but very invisible part of the care system, and that's unpaid family carers. Because without them, and I think Andy referred to this, several of our speakers referred to this, without them, the whole care system, along with the health service, would simply collapse. Estimates vary in number, but I suspect many people on this call today are caring for a family member in one way or another. And it's simply assumed by government and by the health service that partners, children, usually daughters, siblings, sometimes even close friends, will look after their loved ones when faced with long-term illness or sudden crisis. Many of them are willing to do it, and yet the support they receive is haphazard at best and non-existent at worst. So in the select, just to let you know that in the select committee's evidence from personal testimonies, we've heard carers are exhausted, unable to get any respite, often suffer from poor health, face poverty, and they struggle to juggle caring and work. And that, of course, includes many people who are actually care staff themselves, and yet they're also caring for people at home because that's the kind of people they are. I know that Carers UK is a member of the Coalition's advisory board and has got detailed knowledge of what carers want and need, and I'm sure we'll be feeding the very practical things into the campaign. But I just wanted to say I wholeheartedly back this campaign. I urge everyone not to forget the role played by unpaid carers in the social care system, and in shouting out for everybody, let's include unpaid carers as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that, Diana, because we're very big on making sure that they are included. It's right across the sector, because it does impact on so many people. Okay, so
sorry, I have to go.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And thanks very much for that. Keep signing in the pledges if you haven't done already, or tweeting away. We've now got another stalwart and champion for the social care sector, and that's Barbara Keeley. I'm going to bring in Helen Hayes, Liz, and Catherine McKinnell, because I can see you there. But again, really welcome and thanks for your support.
Hello, thanks. I'm not sure what I feel about being a stalwart, actually, Jill, but
sorry.
I have spoken out on many times on social care. I want to just start with clearly, I will agree with everything that colleagues have just said, and particularly Andy and Wes. But we need to look beyond the fact of or come back to the point about pay and the issues of pay and conditions, and the fact that we've got real problems with the quality of care and lack of access to care. As we've heard, there are serious issues with the care workforce. The turnover around about 30%. 7 out of 10 of our care workers are paid below a real living wage. Think of navigating this cost of living crisis when that's the situation that you're in. But that level of turnover causes real issues of quality of care. If you're a person with dementia and you're constantly having this churn of people, different people coming to look after you, then obviously the care you're receiving is not as good as it could be. And I really agree with Andy about the role of councils. It's very important. He mentioned that all Greater Manchester councils have now agreed to pay the real living wage. And I just want to shout out for my local area, authority area of Salford. We could see that our local care providers were struggling to fill gaps in care, in the care workforce, and had that turnover problem. And so Salford decided a couple of years ago to make what they call the Salford offer and start to pay the real living wage, and that's nearly now £10 an hour. And I think the significance of that is that was a manifesto commitment of the Labour Party at the last general election, £10 an hour. Now it's a starting point. Nadra says quite rightly the care that staff provide is priceless, but they need to navigate this cost of living crisis the same as everyone else, and what we pay them really matters. I think it's worth our thinking that when COVID struck, our care system was actually a lot more vulnerable than it needed to have been. And that's important because, of course, we lost over 40,000 care residents who died of COVID, and hundreds of care staff were lost. And that has a real impact. Care staff I talk to, still, some of them have PTSD from what they went through. So this job is so crucial, and the conditions of it during the COVID pandemic were horrendous and will have left a mark on many, many people. And indeed, we lost a care home manager in my constituency. So I agree with Wes what he said about national standards are important. It's a damning indictment that people are leaving social care and going to Amazon. And as Andy said, I fully support paying fair for care. But I think more than that, what we should be saying now is that people who need care and the care staff need a fundamentally better deal. Both sides of care need better. So it's not just that we should pay care staff better, and we should, but we need reform of social care, and that's what we haven't got in view. We don't just want more of the same, because there are such quality problems and lack of access to care that we can't just carry on as we are. So it's good to hear from Wes about the future of social care and the work that the Fabians are doing on that. And I think we've got to remember that we've got a very strong base to build on, because we did all this work, Labour did all this work before 2010. So there was a green paper and a white paper, and we had proposals. It's just that the coalition government didn't move forward with it. So what do I believe? I believe that we must deliver that fair deal for care staff. We've got to get away from them being underpaid, undervalued, and given few opportunities to progress. Paying the real living wage is a starting point, because I don't know, I'm sure we've all met people with years and years and years of experience, as Alison was just talking about, who are just so valuable, and they haven't even got a chance to progress, and they must have that. So they must have training opportunities and real progression, really. So it's good that the Fabians are looking at that issue for Labour. But people who use social care deserve better than the current system. So paying fair for care, integrated commissioning, time to act is now, not just having a plan that you talk about, which is all we get from the current government, but actually doing something. So I do support the lobby. As Alison says, I think there is massive support all across Greater Manchester, and I'm very glad to speak in support today.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I'm going to quickly move on because that was great. I think there is a lot of support. If your MP, you've not had contact with your MP, please do write to them. Make sure that they are listening. We've obviously got quite a few converted people here and are real supporters, but I'm going to go to Helen Hayes and then Catherine, and then we're going to move on to listen to the real voices of the people who are working and living and drawing on social care. Okay, Helen, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jill. It's really great to be here, and thank you to everybody who's been involved in organising this day of action, and to everybody who's joined online in the heat as well. So I'm Helen Hayes. I'm the Member of Parliament for Dulwich and West Norwood constituency in South East London, and I'm a co-chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Adult Social Care. And it is a real pleasure to follow Barbara, who, notwithstanding her reticence about the stalwart title, is nevertheless an absolute champion of adult social care over many years, and I agree with everything that she has said. So during the pandemic, we've got a working group as the APPG for Adult Social Care, made up of providers, not-for-profit providers of care homes and home care, and also people who are experienced in managing their own care at home. And we met every single week during the first 2 waves of the pandemic. And that was such an insight, and such a valuable insight into the experience of those who were working in social care at the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we knew in real time that when Matt Hancock, when the Prime Minister stood up and said, we have thrown a protective ring around care homes, it simply wasn't true. We knew that there were staff battling in the dark because there was no testing and patients were being discharged into care homes COVID positive, and then allowing that infection into care homes with a virus that they didn't understand, with residents who were distressed, deeply distressed because they weren't allowed to be visited by their loved ones anymore, with family members who were distressed and desperately worried about their loved ones in care homes. And that was really a sort of untold scandal at the heart of our response as a country to COVID-19. Those residents and staff working in social care weren't looked after. They were at the bottom of the government's list of priorities in the COVID-19 response. And we know that there were unnecessary deaths, but there was also a huge amount of trauma for staff who were doing their best for the residents that they know and they care for day in, day out. The social care workforce is highly skilled. It is really extraordinary work and some of the most important work that goes on in our country to care for the most vulnerable members of our society, to be that trusted person that families rely on to look after their mum, their dad, their uncle, their brother, their sister, and help those precious people to live with dignity and with the most independence that they can when they need care and support to rely on. I think it's really important that we're having this rally today because there's a lot of weariness in this debate. We have been talking about social care for so many years and for the need for comprehensive reform, for the need of a transformation in pay and terms and conditions for care workers and in the structure of social care to put it on a par with our National Health Service. And that change simply hasn't been happening. And we're talking a lot in Parliament at the moment about a Prime Minister that has no relationship with the truth, who's been finally found out and has had to step down from his role. But there's a really, very telling example of that in his commitment to social care workers. He stood almost 3 years ago to the day on the steps of Downing Street and made a commitment to implement a plan for social care that he had prepared, and it simply wasn't true. And the whole sector and everybody who relies on care has been let down ever since. So we need urgency in this debate, and I agree with everything that colleagues have said on that. We need a plan for reform, and we can talk about raising the level of pay in social care to the level of the real living wage, and that's important, but we mustn't talk about that as the only goal, because care workers need career structure and progression. It should be a lifelong rewarding career where you can really get on working in social care. So we need that reform that Barbara has talked about as well. The APPG stands with you in that agenda. I stand with you in that campaign. And I know that a Labour government will take social care seriously and will implement the reform that we so desperately need. But thanks for all that you're doing in the meantime to keep on pushing for it.
Yeah, thank you, Helen, very much. And there is a plan afoot that we have sort of some kind of joint inquiry or bringing those voices together across the board. So we'll be back in touch, and thank you for everything you do, and spot on as always. And then we've got lovely, where's Catherine McAnea?
I'm here.
There we are, Catherine. Again, lovely to see you, and great that you're here. Thanks.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you all of you for being here for this incredibly important rally. I have to say I'm hiding in a strange cupboard in Parliament, but I was so keen to join you and not to miss any of this that I've just stopped what I was doing and hidden in a cupboard. But I really just want to add my voice of support. I think colleagues have pretty much said it all about how long time this is coming, how much it's needed. How, if you look at it from whichever angle, and I look at it from many, because I have sort of so many hats on in Parliament, fighting for women in the workplace, fighting for childcare rights, fighting for those who have caring responsibilities, fighting for a better deal for people in the Northeast, and for our public services, and for my constituents who come to me regularly just completely traumatized when they suddenly encounter the care system and realize what a challenge it is, and how when they think it's going to be there for them in a way that they need it at the time when it's needed, it's not there for their loved ones in the way that
they imagined. And I think it's a real wake-up call, and I totally echo colleagues who say that this government has promised that they would get care done, social care done, and allocate money to it. And we know fine well that none of that money is going to social care, and we really need the budget to actually deliver the care that we want our loved ones to have. I want my constituents to have. We want people who work in the care sector to be paid, to have that dignity, to be able to feed their own families, to be able to level up our communities and bring everybody up. And I just think, what easier way to level up than to put money in every single community by paying our carers who do such a valuable job, the wages that they need to then spend in the local businesses to then put that money back into the local economy. So whether you look at it from a financial perspective, from a human perspective, from a caring perspective, from the right thing to do for our NHS, and really put that support in place so that it can focus on its core role, and we can make sure that those that need to be in the community can be in the community in a safe way, then there's just no question about supporting this campaign. So just thanks so much everyone for being here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That's lovely to hear. I'm a bit worried about you being in that cupboard, but it's probably a good idea, isn't it? Anyway, there we are. All right, so now we've heard from the politicians, the decision makers, the influencers, the movers and shakers. We really need to talk to the people who are actually on the front line, and really the people who we're talking about. We're very keen at the FSCC to really tell the story of social care in Britain today. And again, if you haven't done so already, whether you are somebody who is working in the service or receiving care, or know somebody who is, it's just talking about what it means to you. So just add your story. And I really mean that for MPs as well, to really tell that story. The idea is that we will deliver that to the new incumbent of number 10 at some point, to gather that really state of the nation. So without further ado, we're going to play a quick video, and we're going to go straight into then Natasha Gleed, Mandy Connick, and Brendan and Suzanne are going to give their personal stories. Okay. Play Jade. Just do the...
Hello, my name is Christopher Powell and I'm a support worker. I'm supporting the Future Social Care Coalition because I believe it's time to act. Social care affects us all at some point in our lives. I'm asking the government to support us. I want to see a social care workforce strategy which would improve skills, training and pay for all social care workers. I want a fair deal for all those working in social care. That's why I'm supporting the Future Social Care Coalition.
Hi, I'm Liz Wilson and I work with Dimensions. I'm a family consultant, which means I'm the interface between families and colleagues. I make sure that family voice is heard at every level when things are being planned in Dimensions. And I spent a lot of time talking with families. So one of the things families always raise when they're talking with me is the pay of support staff. Without doubt, every family member I've ever spoken to wishes that support staff were paid more, and for all sorts of reasons. I think one is that the low pay really doesn't show how valued our loved ones with learning disabilities are. That actually it's really skilled work supporting someone, not just with the basics of day-to-day living, but with learning, thriving and making a contribution in the wider community. If we had decent pay for support workers, people would be able to afford to stay for longer and to do a fantastic job as they move through their career. At the moment, support workers have to work ridiculous hours to make ends meet, and when people are working 50, 60, 70 hours a week, they're not coming to work fresh and ready to take on whatever challenges there are. they're tired and they're not able to give their best, and that's not their fault. We need to be able to encourage people into the social care sector who see it as a place to have their career where all of their skills will be valued. So, for example, if they're a musician, they can bring those skills of musicianship into support work and support people to really enjoy music in their life and to develop their own skills. Whatever it is people have to offer, there's a way to express that within support work. Let's make it a career of choice for people.
Hello, my name is Paul. I am a support worker for people with a learning disability. I come to work with my hands, my head and my heart when I'm with the people I support. Support workers like me need a fair deal. We need a social care workforce strategy to improve our skill, our professionalism and improve our pay and condition. I'm supporting the Future Social Care Coalition because I believe it's time to transform social care.
Hi, I'm Amy Clark and I have a learning disability. Social care isn't just for elderly people, it's for people with disabilities too. Getting support from social care helps me to enjoy my life. Let's make social care better for all of us.
And there you have it. Well said, Amy, at the end there. And it's a really big point that it's not just about older generation. It does affect everyone. So I'd like to now quickly move on to Natasha, and then we'll have hear from Mandy and Brendan and Suzanne. Okay, Natasha, tell us your story.
Hi guys, I've been working in social care now for 6 years. I really was hit with COVID. All the staff went down. Luckily, the individuals did.
Natasha, your line isn't very good.
Three of us into the service to save. We didn't want that because obviously some of them have got dementia. Any better?
No. Would you mind? I'm just going to try and come back to you. And we'll move on to Mandy, and then we'll.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then we'll come back if we can. Okay, Mandy, who does again one work.
I'm hoping you can hear us, and our internet is not as unstable as Natasha's, which I fell for you then, Natasha. I'm Mandy Connick. I'm the development manager for a training provider who delivers health and social care training across the Liverpool City region. And I echo everything that's been said, and I think for years and if not decades, we've underplayed social care, and for, I'd say, decades we've been saying that social care is in crisis. And I no longer think it's in crisis, I think it's broken. I know you've been saying that we need to give it more pay and better pay for care workers, which I think we do. But we work with a lot of employees who do pay the minimum wage, and some of them pay way above the minimum wage. I think a lot of it is to do with society's perception. People continuously saying that it's low pay and low skills, which social care isn't. So social care is highly paid, highly professional. It needs to be exceptionally rewarded by everybody, given parity in the same pay as we do with the NHS, because most people think the NHS are the best thing upon, so the NHS is, but so is social care. Social care can't work without the NHS, and the NHS can't work without social care. And I'd say out of all of the employees we work with, I'd say about 92% of them have all got a shortage of staff, and I say 40% of them have lost over 40% of their workforce. And most of my day is spent listening to apprentices that are working for exceptionally highly qualified qualifications in health and social care to say they no longer want to work in social care. Not because they don't like the job, not because of the pay, but because of the reputation and the lack of perception of society, of social care, which will come with the lack of pay, lack of recognition, and lack of understanding of what goes on in social care. Because we've got the care workers, we've got the cared for, and then we've got the the carers themselves, all of which have a massive impact. And I could probably go on forever, but I think it's long overdue that we actually do put social care high on the agenda and put parity in line with the NHS, because they don't work without each other, and social care is in it. And I know it's been mentioned quite a few times that there's no progression routes in social care. There is progression routes, we just don't advertise them. And I think I've had a really fantastic profession and continue to have a good profession in social care. And I think we need to recognise the professions and the pathways we've got in social care and give it recognition that it deserves. And I'm hoping we do it sometime soon. It'd be nice to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah, so and quite indeed. But I think that whole thing around professionalism, that you do a really valued job, and respect and parity is so important. Now I hear, Brendan, you're having a bit of a problem with your microphone. I don't know if Victoria can come on. In the meantime, Natasha, how are you going? Can we hear you, or bring you back in and just see if it's settled down a bit? Hello? No. No, it's not working. No, it's a very, very twangy. So we're only hearing.
Better? No.
No. I'm really sorry, but it's quite difficult. Well, maybe what we'll do is we'll come back to you, and we'll certainly get that recording.
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's a new laptop.
Yeah. Can I, if Victoria's there, or Brendan, I don't know how you're going to do that. Oh, right. I've been told that Brendan thinks you're fixed now. So a couple of words from Brendan, and Victoria, you're there to help if needed.
Okay.
I'm not hearing that one.
Looks like Brendan's microphone's not working.
No.
Shall I read out his story very quickly?
Yeah, please do, Victoria. Thank you.
So this is on the future social care. So I should say, Brendan and I are from McAnea, which is a charity that supports and campaigns for people with a learning disability. And Brendan is one of our amazing charity ambassadors. And I, with Brendan, wrote his social care story for the Future Social Care Coalition website. And these are very, very much Brendan's words, not mine. But I'll just quickly read them out because I think it's very important. So my name is Brendan, and I have cerebral palsy and a mild learning disability. I've been living on my own for 6 years now in supported living, and I've noticed a big difference in the past couple of years. There are not enough support workers at the moment. Sometimes there's only one support worker on shift where I live, and they don't get paid enough money for the work they do. The support workers don't stay long because they leave for better paid jobs. I will get to know my support workers really well and develop a friendship with them. They learn how to communicate with me and support me. They learn how to spot when I'm upset. But then they'll say they're leaving as they've got another better paid job. It's upsetting when this happens. I get used to seeing them coming every day, and they become a big part of my life. When they leave, I miss them. And then I need to show the new person how to support me all over again. How are people with a learning disability meant to live independent lives when support workers are leaving for better paid jobs? The government needs to fix social care and ensure support workers get a fair wage for what they do.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Victoria, and thank you, Brendan. That's so well said and summed up really, really well. Again, the stories must come in. Suzanne, I'm going to go to you as well, and hopefully your internet's good.
fingers crossed. Thank you everyone for coming. It's extremely hot, isn't it? Yeah, I'm felt really strongly about coming to speak. I am now primarily a private provider of home care. Pre-pandemic, from 2013 until about 12 months ago, we were a mixture of social and private. As I say, we're a private provider. We are not a non-for-profit organisation. So obviously I have to look at that we're making a profit in the care that we're delivering. We're really, really passionate about the care that we provide. We are a small company, but we provide fantastic care. We really care about the staff that work for us and the people who we look after. Since 2013 and up till the present day, the margins we've had to overcome, the milestones we've had to overcome, have meant that the margins have just got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. I want to be able to pay my staff. I want to be able to recognise them for what they do. I want to be able to pay everyone in the organisation what they are worth. But on the way it is at the moment, it's just not possible. Our private clients who we've got now really subsidised the social services clients that we were supporting, and it just couldn't continue anymore. We were making a loss of £1.15 per hour on every social care client we were looking after. Now, as an organisation, nobody can sustain that, not even a non-for-profit organisation. It comes from both ways. It's not just as simple, I believe, as saying we're going to pay staff more. I get staff, and predominantly my staff are women, women with young children who are taking on a part-time role. A lot of those in the area that I live in rely heavily on extra income from benefits and tax credits, and likewise. They come to me and say, but there's no point me taking any more hours because it'll get taken out my wage packet afterwards. So I've hit with a double-edged sword. Not only can I not get more staff because of the views of social care, and I could go and earn more earning in Asda or Amazon, and much more easier job, you know, maybe some career progression in that society. But the fact that actually at the end of the day, when they get the wage packet, they're going to be penalised for earning more money. Something fundamentally wrong. These are the very people who we're looking after. I did a live on Facebook, not sure if anybody on here saw it. It was the day that the national insurance increases were announced, and to me that was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and that was the day I decided that I was going to have to hand back all my social services clients because I just couldn't afford to keep going otherwise. The very people who rely on social services support are the ones that are being penalised. The national insurance increase, those that are, you know, the list goes on and on. And from my point of view, as a now private provider, it is that something needs to change. We want to provide care to people. We want to take on more clients. We want social services clients, but it's physically and not possibly. It's totally untenable as it is now.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Natasha, I'm really so sorry that we can't actually communicate, but I want very much, if we can do something after today to get that message and out, and we'll do that on the social media. There are hundreds and hundreds of stories, just keep them coming in, but all four of you are amazing. Everyone who's in there, in terms of what you're doing, the points you've made are really fantastic. So we're going to move on to the finale, and we've actually, in theory, only got 1 minute, but I'm going to use, I'm going to tweak that slightly so we can just hear a few contributions from the people who support the coalition, who do so much. We've heard from some of them already, but I'd like to just call in Leslie McCormack, John Hughes from Community Integrated Care, and I'm going to leave it with Kezia from the Living Wage, because I think we talked very much about the real living wage, and I'd like to, I think all of you, and I know I've got a whole list as long as your arms that I could bring in, and then we will finish with the one and only Phil Hope, former Care Minister, and also great co-chair, along with Christina, Stephen Dorrell and Alistair Burt. Just to sum up and where we've been, some of the ideas and where we go next, and give his take on today's lobby. So who should I go? Oh, I think I'm going to go to Leslie from MenCap, then John, and then Kezia. That's what I said. Okay, lovely. Sorry, it's been a long time coming, but good to hear from you, and also to get your feedback on some of the things that's been happening and that's been said today.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I'm Leslie McCormack, and I've worked for MenCap for 17 years now, obviously doing my social support for people with learning disabilities and a range of different disabilities going forward. A lot of what's been spoken about today and what a lot of people have actually supported on this coalition today is that we are very highly skilled in terms of we have to learn how the person we're supporting has to, knows how to communicate with you and what their needs are. But we also have to be the emotional support in the families and friends, in terms of there's times where I've gone into hospital with a person I support who's got no verbal communication, and we are that person's support and letting the families know if they are doing okay in the hospitals, and down to going to the GP, speaking to occupational health for them. We have to be skilled on terms of health and safety with any equipment that's needed, even health and safety in their supported living home. We have to keep on top of all that. There's times where we've had to have specialist training, which is a specialist with that person we support, if they need a peg feeding, if they need any terms of like specialist equipment, with anything ranging from breathing machines or specialist training in just anything really, peg feed, but what I've already picked up on. What else was there? I've recently, with all the cost of living going up, I worked in the Wigan area from Liverpool, and myself, I'm now having to transition out to the Liverpool area, whereas I've built up a lot of friendship and learned myself on how the person I support. So for financial reasons, I have had to come back to my own city to now support for financial reasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, my point is basically we are very skilled workers. We need the support and dignity ourselves in everything that we do. The long hours, breaks. If there's not a person that can fill in on a specific shift, then we also have to think of, we know that person, we have to fill in that shift because it's probably best one of us doing it for their needs. Another thing I'd also like to point on as well, which I put in my story of years of supporting, I have also in the past, about 10 years ago, knew a lady from a lady I was supporting. She had no family. I then arranged her funeral, which out of the goodness of my own heart, because I knew that lady and knew what her wishes were, but she had nobody to do it for her. Yeah. So we're not just a support worker, we are support all around. And yeah, we are very highly skilled in what we do.
And thank you so much for, telling us your story. And I mean, it is so true how important you are. And as demonstrated by Brendan, I think apparently we've got Natasha's story. We maybe somebody can read that one out as well. But John and Kezia,
thank you very much.
No, thank you. John and Kezia, just do come on now very quickly towards the end around, the campaign, the ambitions, the asks that have come out today.
Yeah, so I work for Community Integrated Care, and last year we commissioned a report called Unfair to Care. So we got the world's best experts in assessing job evaluations. And what they did is look at the role of support workers, and they found that support workers, if they're doing any other public funded role, including working for the NHS, they're getting £7,000 a year or 39% extra. And that is a massive, massive gap. And you can see the impact it places right across society. You can see the impact it places in people's lives. Our charities had to give about £190,000 worth of welfare grants to our colleagues over the past 2 years, because what we can see as a result of low pay, people are one life events away from a disaster in their own lives. When you hear Leslie talking there about the responsibilities people have and skills people have, it's an absolute injustice. But it's also, as everyone on this call has pointed out, an absolute injustice to the people who access and receive social care support. When you look at the psychological impact of a close caring relationship being broken, it is akin to a bereavement. And in this country, we have thousands of people facing a feeling like a bereavement because they can't understand why valuable and important people are leaving their lives. For me, I see how in the current care sector, it is impossible. And we've never really seen care organisations functioning at their absolute best, because so much of what we're doing is firefighting. And the headroom that we've got to make an impact in society and to make an impact on the NHS and to make an impact on people's lives is massive. But we're managing a churn of colleagues leaving because they have to, because of the financial impacts they're facing. And we are a living wage employer, and I'm really proud of that. But one thing I see in my job role is what that means we can't pay for. There is so much that we should be bringing into society and into people's lives. And at the moment, we're facing an absolute zero-sum game because there's not enough investment and there's not enough understanding of social care. And I think people have seen at different times of the year actual crises because they've been visible and they've been understandable. We all understood when the petrol pumps ran low that there was an issue. But obviously in social care, people might be less able to advocate for themselves. And it's a really big and fragmented sector. And for us, that the work of the Future Social Care Coalition, drawing a spotlight on this issue is absolutely massive. Because we run the risk of, as people have said, going beyond crisis, reaching a stage of things being beyond repair. And we see how integral it is to people's lives. So for us, we're really supportive of everything that people have said around the need of equal pay for equal work and the need for a workforce strategy that gives people equality with their peers in other sectors and gives social care a fighting chance to give the people the support they need.
Excellent. I mean, I think just going back to the opening remarks with Christina about the state of social care and it's like a race to the bottom. I think, that I wrote it down, so that's how I remember it. But I just thought it's actually true that is the state of things today. It's just really shocking. Wonderful things. I'm gonna leave with you, Kezia, which is I think really interesting, because I know often in social care people say, oh well, it can't be done and it's not our responsibility, and we get a lot of kickback. So really keen to sort of get your take on some of the comments today. And really one of the key asks is that we want a real living wage. We're not saying that will fix social care, but it's a part of it. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jill, and thanks for having me today. It's been great to hear all of the speakers and talk about sort of their support for the campaign and the real living wage. So my name's Kezia. I'm a campaigns manager at the Living Wage Foundation, and I lead on our campaign in health and social care to sort of grow the number of health and social care employers in London as part of our campaign to make London a living wage city. But it's also sort of increasingly become a national priority of ours at the Living Wage Foundation, as well as our sister organisation Citizens UK, who work in sort of the community organising space. So what is the real living wage? It's the only wage rate that's calculated according to the cost of living, and it's calculated independently by the Resolution Foundation and the Independent Living Wage Commission. It's currently set at £9.90 in the UK and £11.05 in London. But in response to the sort of cost of living crisis that we've heard a lot about today, we'll be bringing forward our rate announcement for the coming year to September to encourage all of the employers in our network to pay those new rates as soon as possible. So we run an accreditation scheme for employers. This is our sort of like one solution to these discussions and the impacts of low pay is our accreditation scheme that we offer. And that's for any employers who pay all of their directly employed as well as any third-party staff the real living wage. And we also have a number of other schemes to combat in-work poverty. I think Andy Burnham mentioned living hours, which sort of is a scheme that goes alongside the living wage to provide security of hours to low-paid workers. And we also run a scheme called Living Wage Places, where local employers and anchor institutions come together to champion the growth of the living wage in their region. And that's something I just wanted to pick up on, because we're aiming to use that scheme to sort of to pilot the use of our Living Wage Places scheme to encourage newly formed integrated care systems to commit to the living wage. So we're really keen to sort of insert the living wage into all of these conversations about the commissioning of care. As Jill sort of you've mentioned, it can be done. Like, obviously that there are particular challenges in social care to implementing the living wage, but in our network since the start of the pandemic, we've seen sort of like exponential growth in the number of living wage employers that have accredited with us. We currently have 413 accredited social care employers who have uplifted over 25,000 workers in social care to the real living wage. We also have 86 local authorities in our network who are accredited, who have a social care remit, and they're sort of working towards implementing the living wage across all of their commissioning and social care. And so at the Living Wage Foundation, we have a team of staff with expertise in sort of supporting organisations in implementing the living wage. We've got a number of resources for supporting organisations to do that. We have a specific toolkit for social care employers and local authorities who commission care, as well as obviously the hundreds of employers that I've mentioned in our network who are able to sort of share stories of best practice, and we've got case studies of how they were able to do that as well. And these employers have seen a real sort of tangible benefit of paying the living wage. Each year we survey the employers in our network, and we found that 75% of accredited organisations say the living wage has improved staff motivation and retention rates. 86% say the living wage has improved the reputation of their organisation, and 93% that say the living wage overall has benefited their business. So yeah, I mean, I'll stop there because I know I'm conscious of time, but just wanted to say, like, yeah, thanks very much for having me here. Like, we're always keen to hear from people who are interested in the living wage campaign. So please do, get in touch or go to our website if you're interested in finding out more.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think, again, anything, again, telling some of the stories or putting some of that information on the website and using that to say, even if it is saying it can be done, this is what happened, is just useful knowledge to the people to share, because it is often the kickback that it's not our responsibility or we can't do that. I think it is probably around innovation. I'm really, really conscious of the time, and also conscious that I've got a whole list of people who I could call in. You're all fantastic. If we'd been there in person, we would have been chatting till the cows come home, and it would have been a very different experience. But I want to now sort of end, if that's all right with everybody. We'll keep this going, but I wanted to bring the lovely Phil Hope, who is a good friend, but also a colleague, who is the co-chair, along with Christina, Steve Dorrell and Alistair Burr, of the Future Social Care Coalition, and along with the advisory board, and he's also very clever. So I'm sure he'll be very pleased with Andy's words around integration. But just to top the day off, Phil, that would be great.
Jill, what an amazing afternoon, and can I just congratulate and thank everybody who's taken part. We've heard from people who use care services, from unpaid carers, from care workers themselves, their stories. We've also heard from care providers from both the private and the voluntary sector, as well as local authorities and care commissioners. It's been a tremendous coming together, a really big consensus about time is now for a fair pay for care workers, and the starkness of their contributions, that there aren't enough care workers to even fill the gaps that we've got in the care system, that there's this huge turnover of staff that affects quality, that people are on a minimum wage doing a fantastically skilled job, not surprising about low morale and low motivation, and with poor terms and conditions on top of that. No wonder our care workforce doesn't feel valued in the way that they should. I've heard about our care workers having to use food banks as a way of getting through the day and getting through the needs of their families. We know that is completely and wholly unacceptable. And we know that action is needed now. And my congratulations to you, Jill, and the team at the Social Care Coalition for all you've done to make this event happen. And this is one of a series that we've been happening, and I know there will be more to come. We don't have a national care workforce strategy. We have an NHS people plan, but we don't have a social care people plan. Why not? Why shouldn't we have a proper career structure with proper training, proper skills, proper pay, proper terms and conditions for our care workforce? And if we do aspire towards having an integrated health and care workforce to support an integrated health and care system, then one big step along the way would be for us to create a plan for our social care workforce built from the bottom up, but with the leadership of the government and all those people at the top who can do that. It's just common sense, because paying fair for care, for our care workers will help providers and the commissioners of care. That it'll help fill those gaps I talked about. It will improve the quality of care. It will help the NHS to do its job if the social care system is doing its job well. And all of that adds up to a better local economy, because those care workers will spend their income in the local economy and help local businesses too. So the Care Coalition, Jill, as you know, wants to pursue this with energy, with vigour, with cross-sector, cross-party, across the board support. And what are we talking about? We want an immediate increase to the living wage, to the real living wage for care workers. And our target there should be the budget. If we have one after this leadership contest has taken place, it's due one in November. Whoever the new Chancellor and the new Prime Minister are, that's number one on the list of things that they could do straight away to make a difference to the care workforce, to the care system. We do need this social care people plan, and the minister, the new Secretary of State, whoever that's going to be for health and social care, that could be number one on their job list to do. Let's bring together the employers, the trade unions, people with lived experience of care. Let's bring together those with the government and get that put together, a social care plan led by a new national social care forum in which everyone sits around the table, is honest about the crisis, and that is the word that people have used, potentially the collapse of the care system. What can we do together to make that change happen? And I also think, you talked about movers and shakers, Jill. Look, we've had reports from the department's select committees for the Department of Health and Social Care. We've had a report from the department's local levelling up health and housing and communities select committee. We've got a Lords committee meeting talking about the invisibility of the social care system and the social care workforce. We've got all party groups that we heard from today with MPs in Parliament. Listen, we've got the arguments, we've got the people. Let's bring those people together inside the House of Commons to say to the government, whether it's from the Lords or the Commons, whether you're the lowest low MP or the most senior Prime Minister, enough is enough. We've got the evidence. Let's make that change happen. And lastly, we've had a call to action both from the Campaign for the Living Wage, but also from Andy Burnham. Look, we could take some of the action and now we could ask local councils, local health integrated care systems to start to make the change happen now, to start to introduce better wages for care workers in their patch, directly as commissioners or indirectly through the contracts that they have with the people that they're the country who deliver the services. So there's an agenda there. It's a clear agenda. We know what needs to be done. We've got the people on this call and way beyond this who support this. And as one of the co-chairs of the Future Social Care Coalition, I think now's the time to put this show right on the road, Jill. Thanks very much.
Hurrah! That was a great rallying call and a great way to end our online, very hot, on a very hot topic too, Social Care Lobby Day. This is not the end, it's the beginning. I'm sorry we couldn't do it in person and live, such is life these days. We will carry on. I think that whole thing around the bottom up and doing it differently and getting on with it. I think there is a huge agenda for the Future Social Care Coalition. We can't do it without the people on this call and the people who've tuned in today, who work tirelessly but also they're on side. We are a coalition, we are cross-sector, we are cross-party. We want to bring those voices together in Parliament. We want to lobby hard. We'll be taking this message again to the party conferences, and we'll carry it on. But I think now is the time, that whole idea of joining it up, bringing that coalition and making this something that people care about. It doesn't end now, it starts. So give us your story, give it, sign up. We'll keep going, because, and I know, as soon as you start talking, and it impacts you one way or another, that you do care. People do care. I think it just needs to be understood by more people that it can be done. So let's get it done. And that, I think, was rather a good ending from me. All right. Thank you, everybody. And thanks to Gavin and all your lovely people. And keep fighting. Okay.